Today we're going to be looking at the social trends and the issues of the 1970s. And one of the things that took place in the 1970s is that it was kind of referred to as the me decade. Writer Tom Wolfe labeled the 1970s as the me decade to describe the self-absorbed attitude of the time. Many Americans sought fulfillment through the New Age movement and other secular movements of the time. One thing that was big was transcendental meditation, or TM. This was a form of mantra meditation promoted by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And the Beatles became followers of Yogi and the TM movement.
Maharhishi Mahesh Yogi became guru to some of the biggest names on earth.
My opinion is that he's the most powerful person that I've ever met.
He made meditation a household word and is still hoping to save the world.
He's an entrepreneur whose business is spiritual regeneration, and he knows what he's talking about.
In February 1968, the most famous pop group on earth boarded a plane to India. The Beatles were en route to visit the man who had become their guru in all things. And they weren't the only ones.
Landed in India as the sun was coming up, and I'd never been to India before. And the sun was coming up, and I'm stepping off the plane, and I'm thinking, wow, this place is really here. I mean, I'd never sensed a place having that kind of vibration. Good vibration, by the way.
The man everybody wanted to see was Maharhishi Mahesh Yogi, a 51-year-old spiritual leader who'd been teaching the world to meditate for more than 10 years.
Far from the noise and pace of city life, in the cool, clear air of Rishikesh, North India, Kathy News reports from the meditation retreat of Maharhishi Mahesh Yogi, the man who, through transcendental meditation, is currently bringing peace of mind to the Beatles.
They showed up. Scientists, pop stars showed up because he was spontaneous, he was creative, he was joyful, and at the same time he was detached. It was very interesting to be around him.
In early 1968, Maharishi's ashram on the shores of the river Ganges became a mecca for the stars. They were all hoping for the sort of answers that had eluded them up until now.
They were serious students of transcendental meditation and serious students of Maharishi. And they were there to accomplish their own evolution.
The stars had moved out of the limelight that defined them and into a very different way of life. A daily routine as laid out by Maharshi himself.
Meditation in the morning, and then meeting me to understand the experiences of meditation. And then lunch, and then meeting me again afternoon, and then meeting me in the night after their evening meditation.
For the Beatles, Mike Love, and Donovan, staying with Maharshi was a rare opportunity to live a long, forgotten, normal life.
There were 60 meditators there from around the world, and they were very friendly with everybody. They were very accessible. They didn't look any different than anyone else sitting around at the ashram.
But they were. Here were some of the biggest talents in the world of music. And as the course intensified, so did the creativity of the fledgling meditators.
When Maharishi met John one night, Maharishi said to him, "And so how is the meditation going?" And John said, "Well, Maharishi, when I'm deep in meditation, I start writing songs. What should I do?" And Maharishi said, "John, when you are deep in meditation and you feel a song, come out of the meditation, write down the song. After you have written the song, go back to the meditation." And John said, "You mean that simple?" And Maharishi said, "That simple."
And all that seemed possible when Maharshi was invited to appear on the Merv Griffin Show in September 1975. Griffin was a serious and respected talk show host. He also practiced transcendental meditation. Alongside Griffin were other converts, all members of America's elite. This was just the caliber of endorsement Maharshi was after.
In my first meditations, I started jumping. I thought, oh, now I've got another time to jump. But then what you find is that is the stress leaving, and after a period of a few weeks of meditation, it's all gone.
The effect was clearing away the middlemen and misunderstandings and what they may have heard, and they go, oh, wow, Maharshi is great, and Merv Griffin does it, and these people do it. So it was very powerful.
Thank you, Maharishi, very much.
Maharishi's drive for validation was gaining momentum.
I hope I'll see you before you leave.
From doctors to politicians, transcendental meditation was now a very respectable way to relax.
What happened to me was I had this anger, real anger, and out of frustration and not wanting to be in certain situations in my life, within 2 weeks of meditating, this anger, without trying, it lifted away, gone. So it's so freeing. The negativity lifts away, and that's where the enjoyment of life starts soaring.
I was feeling healthier physically. I was more productive, I was more creative, and I was at peace, so everything improved.
But Maharshi needed more than just testimony. For nearly 2 decades, he'd been encouraging scientific validation for his simple technique. His drive for recognition now moved into high gear.
It was he who encouraged, Maharshi himself, who encouraged all the scientific research on transcendental meditation. He didn't want to leave it as a metaphysical, mystical knowledge. He wanted the technique of meditation scientifically understood, scientifically scrutinized.
These are the electroencephalograph patterns of a subject who's practicing transcendental meditation.
Scores of tests were carried out, and the results looked good. From insomnia to high blood pressure, TM seemed to have the answers. Between 1966 and 1976, over 1 million people learned the simple technique. And as TM gained momentum, Maharshi got busy with something new. He was developing an advanced form of meditation, another ancient practice that began its life in the West behind closed doors.
I remember when yogic flying was first introduced in the Transcendental Meditation movement back in the 70s. It was top secret at the time. The people who did it practiced it in rooms with sheets hung over the windows and guards posted at the door, and you weren't supposed to come in. And I was living in a room above the flying room at the time, and I snuck down and I saw people hopping up and down on foam mats.
It's meditation with activity. It's the depth of experience of inward silence through meditation while the body is dynamically moving. The body's actually trying to fly, hopping and spontaneously lifting up.
Initially, the experience was just totally bewildering and amazing, because you were meditating and you were practicing some sutras, you know, which are like mantras, and suddenly your body would lift off the ground.
My mind says, fly. My body says, okay, and off I go. When you walk, do you think about it? Same mechanism, but we're simply using a different principle. We're a little bit outside the box of walking. We're looking into the laws of nature that are affecting gravity, and the body is responding.
Yogic flying was unveiled to the world in July 1986. But this was far from the aeronautics display the world's press had been promised. It was a characteristic exaggeration by Maharshi. and one that detracted from the credibility he'd worked so hard to achieve.
We hope to give you a glimpse today.
He loved to make outrageous claims, and I think he did it on purpose because it did invite ridicule, but it also invited a lot of attention in the media and the press. And I once actually asked him, I said, why do you exaggerate so much? And he said, well, if I want somebody to go 10 miles, I tell them to go 100 miles. If I want to tell somebody to go 100 miles, I tell them to go 1,000 miles. Because if you tell them to go 1 mile, they won't even get up.
Other cultural changes from the 1970s. In the 1970s, more women began to work outside the home. Families began to spend less time together and divorce rates began to climb. Other changes included disco music, nightclubs, CB radios, roller skates, t-shirts, bell-bottoms, and aerobics. Now we'll look a little bit at television in the 1970s. The 1950s family-style sitcoms began to disappear. The Brady Bunch, a sitcom about a blended family with 3 boys and 3 girls, was very popular. This show not only was on for a long time, it also ran in syndication. And I really kind of grew up watching this show. Once again, the idea is you had a single mom with 3 girls. She meets this guy with 3 boys. Together they form this blended family, and they have a live-in maid named Alice. So once again, the idea, you've got issues of a blended family is kind of being the basis for the sitcom. Another popular show at the time was The Partridge Family, and this featured a single mother and her children who played together in a band. And another one of the popular TV shows was All in the Family. This TV series examined social issues like racism in a comedic format. The main character, Archie Bunker, was very narrow-minded, ultra-conservative, really somewhat bigoted, and his daughter's kind of a hippie, and of course she lives with him along with her husband, who also is kind of a hippie, and Archie doesn't like his son-in-law, refers to him as meathead. There's constant conflict between the two, and that really becomes the basis of a lot of the humor in the show. But once again, they did tend to examine many social issues through the show. And it also produced several spin-offs, including Maude, The Jeffersons, Archie Bunker's Place, 704 Hauser, Good Times, Gloria, and Checking In. So, all in all in the Family had a pretty long run on TV. Some of its spin-offs had an even longer run. Another popular show from the time period was The Mary Tyler Moore Show, which was a show about an unmarried woman with a meaningful career. Another popular show was Sanford and Son, which was a sitcom about an African-American father and son who run a junk business in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles. And Three's Company. This was a show about a single man living with 2 single women. And the main character had to pretend to be gay so that the landlord would let him live with the 2 women. And so, although openly gay characters were not portrayed on TV in the 1970s, this is, I guess, as close as we had by having a character who had to pretend to be gay. But once again, a lot of humor of the show kind of tied into that whole deal that the landlord thought he was gay, and in actuality he was straight. But once again, if you look at the family-style sitcom of the 1950s, this is a big shift away from the type of a family-style sitcom to this concept. Now, of course, by today, these types of shows would not be shocking at all. In fact, they might be seen as being pretty conservative by the standards, but they really pushed the envelope from what was acceptable during the 50s and 60s. Some other big stars from the time period. Farrah Fawcett became a star after her role in the TV series Charlie's Angels. And here you can see a very iconic picture that was a very popular poster from the 1970s of the late Farrah Fawcett.